Hey everyone, thank you once again for submitting your questions and for tuning into this World Day Against Trafficking panel. Over the past couple of days, we broke up our original conversation into 4 parts. Part 3 is starting now.
As we continue the panel, we just wanted to bring attention to the fact that we are discussing some difficult and possibly triggering subjects. The goal here is to have an honest, thoughtful, informative, and worthwhile conversation. So we hope you all enjoy part 3. We've spoken about the societal barriers that make it easier for predators to target. We've spoken about potential reasons why a victim may be targeted. This isn't a clear-cut conversation, but again, we got so many questions wondering how an individual stay safe from exploitation. And like I said, it's not black and white, but I do think this conversation of us understanding what exploitation is the first step, and the idea of how do we stop perpetuating it when we don't even realize that we may be a part of that.
I wanna comment, and this is not to shame or put down this person's question, but I think that we need to be very mindful of how we word things, because saying how do we stay safe from getting trafficked sounds like you're placing blame on the person who's being exploited. So I think that I understand the intention behind the question, and the answer to it is that there is no actual way. There's no rule book or step by step, like this is how not to get trafficked. But I do think, like you said, Vanessa, defining it, first of all, and getting that actual definition and remembering that part about the abuse of power and vulnerability is very important. I also think it's not so much how to stay safe from getting trafficked, but more so educating yourself on what trafficking looks like in all forms, not just the white van, and also doing more research on the grooming process and what that could look like. So if somebody's buying you gifts too early, or if somebody's the language that they're using, if they're making you feel like you owe them something, or if it's like, you're gonna do this for me, watch out for those things. It's very similar to just an abusive relationship or a domestic violence partner. A lot of those things intersect, and the language will intersect. But there isn't there isn't a step-by-step guide on how to stay safe, because again, this exploitation process, the system of prostitution, it literally targets your vulnerabilities that are out of your control. So you can't control something that you're just a part of naturally. So that's why there's no real reason and no real way to, in your own free will, prevent yourself. But I do think if you educate yourself on what it looks like, what traffickers might say, or things that they may do, and what the cycle of violence necessarily looks like, learning what threats and intimidation sounds like, those type of things, I think that you have a better chance at recognizing red flags sooner than some people who have been exploited in the past.
And I think sharing that information with friends, with family members, if you're educating yourself, educating other people as well. Again, we have to continue having a conversation about this. That's the only way to truly combat something, is to understand it.
Absolutely.
Melanie was saying, it's not that people walk like, oh, I want to be trafficked, or I want to engage in prostitution, or I want to end up on the commercial sex trade.
Right.
It's more about that. And I think so that even this question came out with, I think so that we need to move out of this romanticizing and glamorization of prostitution, and that it's a safe space, like where you are going to play and there is no harm and all these things. I think so that we need to start talking about realities, and especially with young people. I think so that we don't need to romanticize, to put sugar coating things and all these things. No, this is happening, this can happen, this is happening already. And I like to say in this, even if we are having this conversation, people are being trafficked, and that drives me crazy, because it's how sometimes we are part of it, and it's interesting that you're asking this, because I think so that the one way to combat human trafficking is to understand that human trafficking and prostitution are linked together. Yes. And that it's a system rooted in racism, patriarchy, capitalism, and also we need to start talking about the role of the buyers, because they are the ones who are feeling a lot of exploitation. That buyers are the ones who are giving the money for this. So I think so that we need to keep this real and always talking with facts. And I think so that this happened also to Melanie, but with me, it's I'm sharing all this, and it's not easy to share that, oh, I'm a survivor of human trafficking. of course, we deal with so many things, but we are doing this because we don't want people to be in traffic. You don't want people who are watching this one day encounter a situation, and what we want is to be people aware, to be people like taking one each other, and if you see a red flag, and also really to all the people who are out there with your partner, with your family, with your friend, with your coworker, if your gut is telling you something, trust it. Like, it's so wise to trust your body, like for real, especially when it comes, if somebody's approaching you in a certain way, if somebody is giving you a gift in a certain way, if somebody is it's giving you like, oh, how beautiful you are in a certain way, it makes you feel uncomfortable, that means that your body, it's seeing something that you are not aware of. So always trust your feeling.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's interesting going back to this idea of how difficult it is to speak out when you're a survivor, and how appreciative we are, by the way, of you guys using your voices the way that you are, because this question we got a lot, and it just goes to show the misconception that is out there, that there is a play-by-play book that can keep you safe. Again, we have to have these conversations. We have to hear firsthand experiences to know that it's not that simple, and to know how insidious it is.
Yeah, and another question we got a lot was, are there signs that someone is being trafficked from either a friend perspective or from a stranger perspective? Are there signs that someone might be experiencing trafficking? What can you do specifically to help them if there are those signs?
So with children under 18, specifically school, like middle school age children, as I was mentioning earlier, some of those signs are pretty, like, it sounds kind of generic and cliche, but like if you see children with amounts of money that doesn't necessarily equate to allowance per se, lunch money, if you see if you notice a change in their attendance, the problem with this is that many of the signs that you see for a child that's being trafficked can also be signs of abuse in the home, can also be signs of intimate partner violence, so they all intersect, which is why I don't like really giving them, because it can be anything. The money, more so than anything, can be a sign of either like them involved in selling drugs, or them being exploited. So that's like one of the main signs for children that I would say, but there's not that many across the board, because they all look like something. So my biggest thing is, if you're questioning or doubting it, ask. And if you're wrong, I'd rather be wrong and ask than not know and take a guess. Because what does end up happening is that because we don't know, or because something looks like it's not my business, or I don't want to get involved, we stay silent, and like you could have been the person that could have helped that. There were so many times when I was in prostitution that people would walk past me knowing something was wrong. Like, I'm bleeding, I'm beat up, I'm limping, I'm walking slow, and people would walk past and just look back as if I was weird or not, I didn't fit, right? And sometimes it wasn't that drastic. Sometimes I just looked tired and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt at 6 a.m. and I'm like sitting in Grand Central Station. Like, there's so many different ways that I've been bypassed. But if somebody would have just stopped and said, are you okay? Or do you need help? Anything, like something that simple could have made a huge change. So in my opinion, there's not that many signs that are obvious, because it can be literally anything. But if you see anything that looks out of place, whether it be as extreme as bruises or money or bleeding, or something as minute as this perfect attendance student hasn't come to school in a week, anything like that, or you notice that this person, one of the biggest signs that they say for children is that if you see a kid that is usually with a certain group of friends, and then you notice that they're not with that group of friends anymore, that's usually a sign that's part of the grooming process, where your trafficker tries to get you into isolation. So they tell you can't talk to these people anymore, So that's usually a sign per se. But if you notice anything, it's always worth just trying to ask, period, because then in that you might find out that they're being exploited. So yeah.
Yes, I will say the same, actually, that and especially with adults, for a lot of people it may look like domestic violence, like intimate violence, and that is why it's so hard, but as Melanie say, if it's your friend, if it's your neighbor, and you know them, it's just part of your family, and you start seeing something different. Because remember that psychological coercion is so silently, and it's taking over control, like literally over everything on you. That's why there are no really like red flags or like signs like say like, oh, I'm being trafficked, like, because you know the victim usually it's like under so much stress, pressure, anxiety, trauma, that it's like. But if you start seeing like, I don't know, like maybe an abusive partner, things like that, don't just say like, oh, well, they are boyfriends and I cannot see anything. Like as Melanie say, like go and ask. Like it's way better to ask or something, because that is one of the things that human trafficking that, and when Melanie was saying that so many people bypass me, it was the same with me. Like so many people could approach me and ask me like, how are you doing? Like, where are you living? Like, with who are you living? Or things like that, small things like that. I would probably like be open and say like, help me, or things like that. But because nobody's approaching you because of this fear, like it's not happening to me, or I don't know, is their family, or is their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their partner, like I shouldn't ask anything. And you know, I think so that we need to start breaking that paradigm, that fear of asking and to worry about others.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one other thing I can say, that could be obvious, not so obvious for adults. Let's say you have your apartment and you live next to somebody, or you have a roommate that is usually like hi and friendly, or cordial, or whatever have you, and then you notice every time they're around a certain person their head is down. That lack of eye contact is very big in the grooming process, when you're specifically when you're street walking, but when you have a trafficker in general. So if you notice, honestly, if you notice any changes from what you think is the norm with that person that you know, that's a red flag. But specifically having children having cash, and adults not giving eye contact, or being silent, or not saying hello when they're with a certain person, that's all part of the grooming process. It's the idea of quote unquote pimps up, hoes down. So you don't make eye contact, and they're supposed to be beneath you and inferior. So that's something definitely to look out for. And I did have a client once, a mentee, that her neighbor was the one who realized that she was being exploited because she didn't say hello to her when she walked. And the thing with adults, like with children, it's hard because all of these different, like children's emotions can go all over for many reasons. He didn't sit at lunch with me, she didn't play with me, so you never know. But with adults, usually if somebody's friendly and then their attitude switches quickly, there's a problem. So usually that's something to ask, because adults don't just naturally switch because they can contain how they're feeling more often. So when you see sudden switches like that, that's definitely something to look out for.
This actually transitions a little bit into a question that we have about, why silence happens, and the emotional journey that can come from being a survivor. In Saving Zoe, there's a tremendous amount of guilt and embarrassment and fear and denial that my character Zoe experiences, and that contributes to her staying silent. That contributes to her not asking for help. Can you guys speak a little bit about the emotional journey that comes with surviving trafficking or exploitation?
Yes, I can start, like, and I think so that's why it's so important, like, for more males to have this conversation, because I think so that here is where machismo, like how manly you are, like play a role. Because remember that human trafficking is sexual exploitation, so sexual harassment, rape, and I think so that we have this idea of males cannot be raped. So I think so that is one of the big barriers that, especially when you are being trafficked or abused, and your body is reacting, and you force yourself to believe that I am enjoying this, so I'm part of this, and I choose to do this. And even if you don't understand that your body and your mind are now separated, and you are disassociating, and your body is reacting because it reacts to external signals, I think so that is one of the barriers that how sexual violence, sex trafficking, it's like an abuse of your whole body, of your mind, of everything. And it's how your body protects you. The other thing is the cultural component. Like males don't talk about it. Like males, we don't recognize when we are raped. Like even if we are raped, we are afraid like that we are not being man enough, that nobody's going to like you, that how your sexual life is going to see, how other males are going to see you. I think so the cultural component is huge about like keeping silent. Another thing is a trauma bond. Remember that most of the traffickers, a lot of traffickers are can be family members, friends, partners, or somebody who just bond with you. So it's hard because in your mind, through the psychological coercion, the abuse, the violence, the sexual violence, you feel, because you feel it, that you receive help. And in that moment in time, in your mind, it cannot exist like, but I was receiving help, so I wasn't abused, or I was receiving help, or I was being supported, so I wasn't exploited. So because your mind cannot hold those two things, it's too much to hold it, because it's like, and I think so this is part of the cultural component, this narrative that your partner is the one who is going to take care of you, the people who love you is the one who's going to take care of you. So if we continue with this narrative, is that okay, so the people who are helping me and supporting me, they are the good ones, they are the ones who are taking care of me, they are the ones who are protecting me. So that means that it doesn't matter whatever they do, they are the good people and they are helping me, and it's me the one who is understanding other things, it's me the one who is creating a history, it's me the one who is overreacting, it's me the one who are the one to blame, who is the guilty one, who is. So this is the problem with trauma bond, and to be honest, I think so that we need to extend about what is trauma bond, because it's true. We have feelings with our perpetrators, with our abusers, with our traffickers, because you know what? We have spent certain amount of times. To be honest, probably they were the ones who gave us housing or food for the first time in days, in months, in weeks. I don't know, like a hug in so many times, like those feelings that we didn't receive. So it's true. I think so that sometimes we discredit what survivors feels, because we blame them, you know, like especially when we don't understand trauma bond and how like, but how you end up in traffic. And it's like, it's not that I decide to be in traffic, it's not that I decided like suffer from transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, or have born with certain color of skins, or grew up with certain core family, different family, like, or immigrate. Like it wasn't like really my decision. It's all the system and all these people who are there like preying on these all these vulnerabilities. So I think so that those are the main components, and probably Melanie had more, but at least for me, those are the main ones. And I think so that I want to tell people who are watching this that if you met one survivor and a survivor is telling you part of your story, like honor that. And when I say honor that, it's not like you to be shocked. It's not like for you to rescue them, to help them. It's not about that. It's just like hold that space for them, because it's hard for us to really trust people, because remember, human trafficking is about exploitation of our body, of our mind, of our soul. It's about exploitation of a human being. So it's hard for survivors to talk about this.
Christian just brought up so many amazing points. One of the things that stood out that he said was that idea of your body is reacting, but your mind doesn't want this. And I think that happens in rape too, because the body is physical, and physical reactions have nothing to do with what's going on up here. And in the beginning, when they're still breaking you in, that grooming process, that beginning stage, almost every time you get taken or you first have an engagement with your trafficker, they rape you. That's how they break you in. They make you scared of them, right? And in most cases, and that's the first, besides being scared, that's the first emotional thought that you have. Like, I don't like this, but why am I feeling this down there? Why am I whatever? Then there's this idea that trauma bond. So it's interesting because trauma bond can extend to Stockholm syndrome, which is what many people who leave their traffickers end up facing. I didn't have it, thank God, but a lot of people miss their trafficker. And I think that the thing is, we don't like the beatings. We know that they'll hit me. But part of what Christian was mentioning earlier about that conditioning, once you've been hit, beaten, repeatedly raped, left like with denied food, denied water. I was locked in an abandoned house in a closet. I couldn't shower until I made a certain amount of money. When you're denied these things, it becomes so bad that when you actually exit and get out, you say to yourself, that wasn't that bad because it could be this. He didn't kill me, so that wasn't too bad. Or he beat me, he gave me a black eye, but he let me eat that night. So he has a heart. So you start to make yourself accept the abuse that you were receiving because you wanted to see the good in that person, or because you still made it out, or because you still could see and you're not blind from that punch or that kick or that pistol whip or whatever. So you start to, and this comes with the trauma bonding, you start to make excuses and justify the actions because that person has conditioned you to feel like they're the only person that's going to care for you, or they're the only person that's in your corner. This happened with me the first time I was arrested. I was arrested at 13. Now, I was not in a love relationship with my trafficker, nor was I he wasn't a romantic pimp, so I didn't know him prior to him taking me off the street. But after a certain amount of time with him, the first time I got arrested, he had ingrained in my head the fake story I was going to give the police officers, which I did. But I remember when I was 15, I didn't have any, it's a long story, I didn't have any closure with him because he ended up finding out that the police were coming to break down the house, and he left, he fled. He kept me locked in the closet and disappeared. So the next thing you know, I'm arrested and I've never seen him since. But I remember the first juvenile detention facility I was in, I caught myself writing a letter to him. Didn't have an address for him, didn't know where I was, but I wanted to know why he left. And somebody said to me, I remember a worker saw that and was like, how can you write a letter to someone who did all this horrible things to you? And people don't recognize that we are now conditioned that what they did was not that bad, because I'm still alive and I can still walk and I've eaten and, X, Y, Z. So it doesn't always look like he threw you in a wall, he drugged you with the needle and taken and had you like laid out and you just want to be with your family. I missed my family. My family thought I was dead. He constantly used my siblings and mother as a threat and that intimidation. But he would also say things like, as soon as we make this, we're going to get out of here. Or we're only doing this so we can live a better life, or XYZ. These little things or those compliments and those promises you got during the grooming process, those things stay with you. And because your self-esteem has been broken down, you hold on to those little promises. Despite all of the fire, you find that little needle in the haystack because you are, in your mind, you've accepted it. So now it becomes, okay, well, I deserve this. Okay, well, it was my fault. Okay, well, I didn't run fast enough. I didn't escape fast enough. I didn't jump out of a window fast enough. So now, because you've taken on and accepted this responsibility, and in your mind, you feel like you had a part and a role to play, now you accept all of that abuse as forms of love because he still made sure you changed your clothes, or because X, Y, Z. So that the cycle of trauma is extremely, extremely complex, and it's not for a lot of people to understand, and many people don't, because when they hear these stories, they think, well, he did this to you or she did this to you, you should be mad at them forever, never forgive. Or he did this to you, that means he didn't care for you at all. And 9 times out of 10, they don't. But when the way trauma works, we see it as that. If he hits me today and then he goes and has sex with you after and makes up for it, that's him making up for it. So now you're like, but I think he loves me, but I think he cares for me, and that stays with you. And the other thing I want to mention about the emotional piece that a lot of people don't take into account, I always say you can take a person out of prostitution, but you can never take prostitution out of the person. And what I mean by that is that the effects mentally and psychologically that you endure in the life stay with you forever. I consider myself a decent advocate. I can speak, I'm well-versed, I know how to tell my story and not cry on stage. However, I still got to go in the mirror every morning and look at myself and remember when my pimp made me look in the mirror and say that I ain't shit, excuse my French. So the thing is, these are things that stay with you forever. As I mentioned earlier, part of the grooming process is you not looking another pimp in the eye, so you keep your head down. I have problems to this day giving eye contact with somebody for more than 10 seconds. Little things like this stay with you. Sometimes you might I suffer with really bad PTSD, nightmares, night sweats, insomnia, all of these things. Or if I have a bad dream, or if I hear something, if I hear a loud noise or a boom, or if somebody walks past me on the street and smells like a certain cologne. There's so many different triggers that you've received, and that couldn't even be That could be cologne from a sex buyer. It doesn't have to be a pimp. It can be something or someone that you've come into contact with, or some place that you passed that your pimp may have driven past. Or there's so many different things, and people don't understand that this is a battle that we have to deal with for the rest of our lives. That mental breakdown and conditioning is something that has lifelong adverse effects. And many people think that once you're taken out of prostitution or taken out of your exploitative situation, that all of a sudden, they love to use words like rescued and saved and escaped, which, by the way, I cannot stand those terms. But a lot of people think that you found your salvation, so now the sun is just magically going to come out for you. And I need people to recognize, and I want to emphasize that mental health in general is very complex and very hard for most human beings. And the majority of American society, at least, suffers with depression. Over 80% of individuals are diagnosed. But to add to that, somebody deliberately breaking down your psyche, that is something that is going to stay with you forever. It interrupts or it impacts your sex life later on. It impacts how you make relationships with other people, people that you date, how you look at yourself. If you judge yourself too critically or not too critically, there's so many ways that just having one experience or one commercial sex act can really impact you. And I hope I didn't rant, but I needed people to hear that, because this is something that I'm still living with 10 years later. And I still can't look in the mirror at certain times, and I still judge myself too much, because that's all my trafficker did. And sex buyers choose you based off of how you look to them. So everything, the first time I was sold to somebody, I was sold for $1,000. It took me 15 years to get out of my head that I'm only worth $1,000. These are things that stay with you for life, and some people still haven't gotten past that. So I really want people to recognize that, no, we're not all thrown into white vans. No, we're not all chained to basements. Yes, sometimes it's a boyfriend or a partner. And these are things that even 10 years out, as an esteemed advocate, I still suffer. And I need people to know that I will still be suffering when I'm 30, and I'm still going to suffer when I'm 50, because the things that happened to us were not humane. So it wasn't part of our psychological. Humans are not supposed to go through these things. Nobody should be going through these things. And love and safety is on our hierarchy of needs. So if that was taken from us and then replaced with bashment and abuse, and then saying this is what love looks like, now our psyche is all messed up. Our hierarchy of needs is all over the place. And now it's up to us to reteach ourselves how to reintegrate into society and how to be a normal or average person, when all we feel is distrust and that we're not normal. So it's something that's lifelong. It's never going to leave us. And that's why it's so critical that survivors are at the table when policies are being implemented. That's why it's so critical when movies about this come out, to have survivors in those conversations, all types of things, because there's only survivors know certain things that happen in the lifestyle. And it's very, very, very imperative for us to be at the table.
Melanie, thank you so much for being so honest and so candid and putting yourself out there, because I really think that this is such an important topic, and you're absolutely right. Survivors have to be at the table. They have to be at the center of the table talking about this. I'm actually going to skip slightly ahead, and we're going to go back to other questions that we had planned, because this transitions so well into it. And we also got this question a bunch, is, as friends and close ones, what's the best way to react or respond to someone who is coming out of a trafficking situation or dealing with exploitation? And what you just spoke so eloquently about and so passionately about is your emotional survival. What can loved ones, what can people do? What is the best way to support someone?
I will say that it is really hard. To be honest, first, people need to understand that we don't trust people, especially if we are just coming out of the life. We're just coming from a trafficking experience. Like, we don't trust people because we can't trust anybody. So even if this person was your friend or is your family, like, it's not the same person that you met before the trafficking and after the trafficking. So healing, it's different in every person, and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of patience and compassion. The thing with survivors of commercial sex exploitation, trafficking, and prostitution is that probably we are going to trigger those around us, because I know that all of us, we have experienced trauma, we have experienced like different situations, but sometimes trafficking encompasses so many things that probably when we are sharing something, we are going to trigger you. So I think so that if you want to really support a person who just escaped from trafficking, who is still dealing with all these things, like have compassion for that person, but have compassion for yourself also, because you are going to need that a lot, like for real. Like, and I think so that sometimes survivors, we are like, it's not that we want to be mean, but we are sometimes super upfront because we don't like lies. We don't live in that world. And so, especially when we just came out of the trafficking situation, we are so vulnerable at the same time, but we are super triggered at the same time. So it's super hard, I think so, like to, especially with friends and all these things. And what I would say to friends and family is like, first educate yourself, because you don't want to be that friend, that family member, that partner who is like, how were you trafficked? Like, how many people slept with you? How much were you charging? How many money were you earning? Like things like those are so disrespectful things that nobody needs to know other than maybe your therapist or your lawyer, or even though if you want to, if not, nobody. But first, educate yourself. If you really want to support a survivor, educate yourself. I think so that sometimes when we hear survivor, it's like, oh, we can ask whatever we want, and like just digging in your morbosity and all this. No, that's not true. Like, we have feelings. We are also human beings. As Melanie says, we experience something that any human being should experience in any point in time in life. For real, like for real. I'm always, when I talk about this, I'm always like, for real, like I don't want no one else to be in traffic, being exploited because of their vulnerabilities, because they are immigrant, because they are part of the LGBT community. So really educate yourself, and respect. I think so that sometimes also survivors, we have to really push our boundaries, because sometimes people, I don't know why, but things that survivors are weak, and that we're gonna, and usually people want to trespass our boundaries, and usually at the same time we are super mindful. So I think so that survivors are super mindful now. We understand that what do you want to achieve, but that is not the right path. So if a survivor is setting a boundary, like, respect that. If a survivor is telling you this is not the time to talk about this, like, respect that, like, and honor that and all these things. And at the same time, if you really want to help this, have this conversation, show this video to more people, like, to increase awareness. And also, like, if you suspect that somebody is being a victim of human trafficking, you cannot approach that person and put that label on them. Even if you know a survivor and that person doesn't identify themselves as a survivor, you never put a label on somebody. You never put a label, oh, but that sounds that you're a survivor of human trafficking. That sounds that you're a survivor of sex trafficking. Never, 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 never. Because this is such a personal experience, and there are people that they just want to continue their life, because this is not easy, as Melanie was saying. This is something that we are continually experiencing, like 24/7. Actually, Melanie and I, we were having a conversation that how was I dealing with nightmares, and that I was like, and we were kind of like laughing, like you know what, like, call me, like we are both having nightmares and insomnia and all these things, that we were like interchanging like self-care tips and all these things. But it's hard. It's really hard to be a survivor out there, especially because the war is not trauma informed. People want to approach us like if we are like something new, like if you can touch every part of us, like, but I want to learn, and I want to dig inside of you and see your darkness. And it's like, you cannot do that. We're human beings, and we are still suffering from our experience, so respect that. So and I would say that you really, people, educate yourself, like, and be really respectful about how people identify, and never put label on others.
Really quickly, I just want to add, if somebody is a friend of yours that's just coming out of trafficking, approach them with the same compassion and delicacy as you would a family member of yours that's having like a mental health episode, right? Like, people, and again, going back to that stigma, they think survivors are weak. Simultaneously, society thinks people with mental health are weak or don't have the ability to think for themselves. On a smaller scale compared to what Christian said, so many people that hear about my story come up to me and say, have you considered therapy? Don't ask that, because that's probably one of the first things that we consider in our healing journey. And so many people, like, it's very condescending to think that we're stupid enough to not try to seek out that kind of help. But also, don't tell survivors what you think they should do. And it's one thing to provide resources and say, do you know this number? Do you ever heard of this agency? Do you know this person? That's one thing. But when you're like, I think you should try yoga, I think you should do, those things may work for you, but you're coming from a place of not experiencing complex trauma. So do not impose what you think, and you shouldn't do that for anybody. Don't yuck anybody's yum. Don't tell somebody what you would do in the situation because you weren't in it. The only time that even among survivors, I should not tell Christian what he should do at home for self-care, right? I hear what he says and we exchange in that way. But those condescending questions, and have you considered a mental institution? Have you considered medication? Have you tried writing a poem? Like, we know these things. These are very generic. I understand the intention in trying to help, but it comes off as stigmatizing. And also, don't be too pushy with your friends, especially when they come out. And like Christian said, the friend you knew is not the same friend that's gonna come out. It will be the same Melanie, but it won't be the same mindset, because all that we knew just got broken down. So you may or may not be very frustrated at times. I'm gonna be very honest, because when we come out of the light, we're trying to battle ourselves with what we thought we knew and what our traffickers ingrained in our head. So don't take personally if your friend cancels on you, or doesn't respond to your text, or doesn't want to talk to you, or doesn't spend as much time. Those things those are symptoms of mental health in general, especially people with depression and anxiety, but it's amplified when you're coming out of the life. So just watch what questions you ask. Don't be too intrusive. I know when I had to testify for grand jury, that's one of the first things they said, how many people did you sleep with at night? That's always the curiosity. Curb your curiosity and respect the person's experience. We don't want to talk about how many people were forced to rape us every night. That's not what we want to talk about. If anything, we want you to bring something else to the conversation, because we're tired of talking about what we just went through. So just be mindful of your questions. Don't ask things that are really, really elementary, like, have you considered therapy? Don't tell them what you would do, and be mindful of that pushiness, because our traffickers and sex buyers are already pushy. So we're going to be very hypersensitive to someone telling us what to do, and then we might have an outburst as a reaction, and that can be taken in a very, very different way. So do those things, be mindful, and like Christian said, educate yourself. It is not our job to tell you about what trafficking looks like after we came out of it.
Yeah, can I just say again, I know we've said again, and I'm going to say it multiple times, thank you guys so much for speaking about this and this experience.
Thank you for this platform. This is so necessary. And I think
Yes.
this conversation has extended, I will say. I know we're like probably watching the clock right now, but it was so imperative, and there's so many questions across the world about trafficking, and Saving Zoe was a film that opened, or at least touched upon, this subject and opened the eyes to so many people's curiosities. And this conversation to me is just flowing naturally. I'm very grateful.
Yes.
To be honest, for us, we're like, we want it as long as possible, because there are so many different facets. There are so many different aspects.
Right.
And, we're not going to be able to solve and cover everything today, but I think it's what we've been saying is having that conversation, having these conversations, it's so necessary. Well, we're going to end on that note right now. Thank you all for watching part 3. Part 4 will be posted tomorrow.